I want to explain to you the difference between the words president and precedent. With, of course, a variety of examples: cricket, politics, history. Now, president, President, the middle syllable is pronounced Z-I, that is Rashtrapati, President. And precedent, Precedent, the middle syllable is pronounced CSI. Right. First, understand precedent. Right. Of course, you know president. What is precedent? And what is a convention? How a bunch of precedents, if followed, can become a convention, which is understood to be as unwritten rules. Right. Let's take the example of cricket. The greatest batsman ever, Sir Donald Bradman. His highest score was, I think, 333 runs. And many times Australian batsmen could have surpassed that score. In the last 10 years, I remember Dave Warner, Australian opening batsman. He could have scored 350 or 400, but chose not to surpass Sir Don's score. Michael Clarke against India in 2011 also scored 333 runs, and he was captain of Australia at the time. He chose to declare instead of, he could have aramse continued further. He could have scored 400 runs. He could have beaten and surpassed Brian Lara's 400 mark. He chose not to. Now, since several decades, many Australians have chosen not to surpass Sir Don's score. And now that has become an unwritten rule. Right, a convention. Right. In politics, in post-independent Indian politics, in 1964, Radhakrishnan was the president and PM Nehru died in office. When he died, there was this confusion and there was no clarity as to who would succeed Nehru. There was no heir apparent. Right. Now, and Nehru was such a tall leader. Every other person was in his shadow. Every other person was just a mere underling under him. So, Radhakrishnan set a precedent of appointing the senior-most cabinet minister, Gulzari Lal Nanda, as the caretaker prime minister until such time when the Congress Legislative Party in the Lok Sabha would choose their leader to take over as Prime Minister proper. Now, Radhakrishnan was a very well-educated president, and he was also presidential, right? He was aware of his role as the president, right, as the nominal head of the republic, and he was a scholar of political science, philosophy. He was very well aware of the Westminster British parliamentary system of government and knew his role. So he chose to appoint, with no arbitrariness, no favoritism, the senior-most cabinet member, senior-most cabinet minister as the PM. Now, of course, the Congress Legislative Party chose Lal Bahadur Shastri to take over as the Prime Minister, as the successor to Nehru. And then, of course, a couple of years later, he also died in office. And again, there was confusion. And again, the senior-most cabinet minister turned out to be Gulzari Lal Nanda. And if it was Radhakrishnan still in office as president, he chose Gulzari Lal Nanda again to be caretaker prime minister. Unlucky for him, again, he was not chosen as the Prime Minister proper by the Congress Legislative Party. The Congress Legislative Party chose Mrs. Indira Gandhi, future Sherni, as PM. Now, let's jump to 1984. Indira Gandhi is assassinated. There was again this confusion because initially she had chosen Sanjay Gandhi. People understood that Sanjay Gandhi was the heir and he was also dead years before. And Indira Gandhi's son Rajiv and the senior-most cabinet minister at the time, Pranab Mukherjee, both of them, Indira's son and Pranab Mukherjee, were in Bengal, probably on a campaign trail. I read this in Pranab Mukherjee's own memoirs, the Indira Years, part 2 of his memoirs, his autobiography. So they were in Bengal and they were put on a plane. They were flying back to Delhi because they had heard, they had received reports that her mother, that Indira was not assassinated, she was shot. It was not confirmed that she was dead. Of course, they finally got to know that she had died, she had passed while they were airborne en route to Delhi. Pranab Mukherjee was not selected by the then president Gyani Zail Singh as the caretaker prime minister, even though Mukherjee was the senior most cabinet minister. So the precedent set by Radhakrishnan was not carried forward. So Gyani Zail Singh went against the precedent. Therefore, the precedent could not become a convention, an unwritten rule. You see, Radhakrishnan could have also contested. I'm sure you know this, that Rajendra Prasad is the only president to be president twice, and there's no constitutional term limit. You can be president, you can contest. There's no limit. You can contest any number of times. And yet, no president after Rajendra Prasad chose to contest elections for the second time. So many presidents succeeding Rajendra Prasad set a precedent, and that became a convention, an unwritten rule. Today, nobody even thinks of a second term. Right? So Gyani Zail Singh chose not to continue the precedent set by his predecessor president Radhakrishnan.